First on the agenda is our property and casualty insurance update, and that is with Mr. Copp Beglin from USI Insurance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Council should have received a handout from Mr. Beglin. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay. First and foremost, thank you for having me this evening. My name is Beglin. I'm with USI Insurance. We are a national brokerage firm. I work out of our Dayton, Ohio office. I want to thank Jeff and the village for entrusting us with the property and casualty insurance needs. I run the public entity practice in the state of Ohio for USI Insurance. We currently write over 170 municipal entities out of our office. We write everything from a one-man water district up to some of the larger cities in the state. So I've been pursuing the village for a number of years, and finally this year we got a chance to put numbers on the table, and that's why we're here. I want to talk a little bit about the USI and about the pool. Please feel free to interrupt me at any time. I put a ton of information in that bifold folder for everyone. It just kind of highlights what products and services we're bringing to the table that no one else in the industry is currently offering their municipal clients. So first and foremost, Public Entities Pool, or PEP, was formed in our basement 36 years ago. 4 municipal entities got together. They couldn't afford insurance in the open market. They pooled their resources and they made a deal. No one was allowed to make a claim for the first year, so they could potentially survive to the next year. They made it. We went from 4 initial members, Greene County being member number 1, to 597 members today. We are one of the largest and the most well-financed pool in the state. And that's really important when you come to pooling, is that you have the ability to pay those claims. We were endorsed by the Ohio Municipal League 2 years ago. I worked with Kent Sheridan and his team. They were looking for an insurance partner to work with Ohio OML members. They scrutinized our insurance forms. They looked at our claims handling. They actually reached out to our members and asked for references. They also did this to one of our competitors, and long and short of it, they determined that PEP was the best option for the Ohio Municipal League members. So we're very proud of that relationship. Kent Scarrett is actually on our board, and he has insight and affects some of the coverages that are offered to the membership. I said earlier that our pool is very well financed. We have currently over $41 million in member equity. Member equity is simply whatever's left after you've paid for the marketing, for the claims, for the pool handling services. Sedgwick Risk Services handles that. To put that into perspective, and this, I'm kind of following the right side of your bifold folder if you want to go take a look at this information. So we have a AAA rating by Dematec. Dematec rates over 600 pooling type organizations across the United States. Of those 600 pooling organizations, less than 20% get a AAA rating. That is comparable to an AM Best A-rated carrier. We have $41 million in equity. Your previous carrier had a total of $270,000 in equity. I checked their finances right before I came here. They had a negative $300,000 in operating revenue last year. What does that mean? If you guys had stayed with that pool, it is an accessible pool, which means that if they suffered another loss of this magnitude, they would have wiped out all of their reserves, and they're going to come back to the membership and ask for additional premium. We are a non-accessible pool. What you're paying is it. So it's a one-time deal, and we're not going to come back and ask for extra monies. Because we have so much member equity, this translates into services. And what we're doing right now are some of the things that no other carrier in the industry is doing for their members. We're offering free property appraisals. We're actually going to send the CBIZ appraisal team in at no charge to the village. We're going to look at every building that's valued at over $100,000 on your schedule. We're going to come back and sit down with Jeff and discuss the statement of values you provided us for the insurance quote versus what we came up with CBIZ. We want you to be insured to value. We don't want you to find out that you're at a building valued at $100,000, and after a total loss, it was worth $1 million to rebuild. Good news is the pool would take care of that. We're going to have an uncomfortable conversation, but we're going to do it. And the other side of it, and we've had this happen in New Carlisle in particular, we found that they were $4 million over. They had actually overvalued all of their buildings, and we ended up giving them back about $6,000 in premium at the end of the year. So we want you to be insured to value. We want to make sure in the event of a loss, we're going to take care of every dime of the loss. If you did an appraisal by industrial appraisals in the open market, that's about a $5,000 to $7,000 cost for the village the size of West Milton. We have the free legal access hotline. If you get into a situation where your law director is not necessarily familiar or comfortable dealing with a potential claim, you have access to expert attorneys in municipal law, 90 minutes of consultation, protected by attorney-client privilege. You simply call the 800 number and say it's a zoning issue, it is an employment practice issue. We will refer you to an expert in that field. You get 90 minutes of free consultation. If you choose to work with that attorney moving forward, you get to do so at our reduced negotiated rates. That's one of the most underutilized tools that we currently offer our membership. Cyber liability is probably the biggest issue in our industry right now. In 2020, cyber losses were estimated to be $1 trillion with a T dollars worldwide. In 2021, they're estimated to come in around $6 trillion. Our underwriters, no underwriter in the world has put aside enough money to cover these losses. What we're seeing is carriers abandon the market or increase premiums exponentially, as well as deductibles. We have maintained a constant premium and coverage over the years. We were also the first to offer cyber universally to all of our members. We also have a cyber specialist. So we have one guy covering 600 members. We need another one. What he's going to do is he's going to look at all of your systems. He's going to make sure you've got multi-factor authentication. He's going to make sure you've got proper password procedures. The good news is, if you're a new member, you go to the absolute top of the list. So I'm guessing within the next 60 to 90 days, Mr. Sheridan's going to give a call and our cyber specialist come out. He's going to look at your inventory, make sure your policy and procedures are in place, and hopefully help prevent a hack. In our world right now, it's not a question of will you be hacked, it's when will you be hacked. We added active assailant coverage. A coverage we hope you never have to use. We did this universally across all membership. It's $250,000 per event. And we actually put this into place about a year before Dayton had their incident at the downtown. Dayton is actually one of my clients, but they don't use us they're not in the pool, they're in a separate carrier. They did not have active assailant. Now, even though that happened in the Oregon district, if they had this coverage, it happened within 600 feet of the convention center, they would have had the full use of an active assailant coverage. It picks up counseling services, property damage, liability issues, medical costs, funeral costs, unfortunately, and job retraining. Again, provided at no additional charge to the village. And finally, the one service that we offer that I think is the most popular service, it's the PET grant. And Jeff can probably attest that grants are no fun, they're paperwork nightmares. We have the easiest grant in the industry. It's name, address, phone number. What did you buy that was safety related? Please attach a copy of the receipt and we'll reimburse you $1,000. This could be anything from bulletproof vests, defibrillators for the council chambers, vests and cones for the guys in the council department. We really have only turned down 2 grant requests in 4 years. The first was for a sniper rifle, and the police department said, we'll be farther away from the bad guys. That one got turned down. And the second one, when someone wanted to use it for salt. That one, unfortunately, that's an annual buy. So that's one of the very popular programs that we offer. Surprisingly, every December, I'm on the phone calling members going, you guys haven't used your grant. please send me a receipt. I'll fill out the form for you and get you your $1,000. So we do track that. I do have a team, and I should have mentioned this. There's 4 of us covering all of these members, 170 different municipalities. I am the least experienced member on my team with 18 years in the field. Shannon and Melinda have 25 and 30 years respectively. They've forgotten more than I know, I think, some days. And then I have Dave Anderson, and he's another road warrior like myself. He's out seeing the clients on a day-to-day basis. Dave is actually a retired municipal manager and former township trustee administrator. So Dave understands what you guys go through on a daily basis. He speaks the language, and he's a great asset to our team. 2 last things, and again, any questions, guys, please jump in. I included a coverage comparison on the right side of that binder. And it's just kind of a breakdown of what you have versus what we provide. And in every situation, we always like to meet and or exceed your current coverage and deductibles. And I think we pretty much did that across the board. Jeff and I sat down and reviewed the coverage. The one item I think we slightly lowered your what we call first party liability on the cyber. I didn't see what your renewal quote came in from our competitor, but I'm guessing we did the same thing just because of the cost involved in cyber liability. So we have the full $5 million limits on the third party liability. Those are defense for the village. Those are claims of negligence against you. That's at a 0 deductible. We are the only carrier in the market offering a 0 deductible on cyber liability. The coverage that we were slightly lower than the incumbent was the first party liability, and that's for claims against those individuals, or claims and coverage for those individuals whose data was actually compromised. So that limit went down to $250,000, but that's going to cover primarily credit monitoring services. It's going to cover a PR person to deflect attention away from you, so you guys can continue to do your jobs. We take the heat. It's for the ransomware that may pop up. Again, $250,000. We have staff attorneys that, I hate to say it, negotiate with them, and it's an interesting process to watch. And that's subject to a $10,000 deductible. Every other coverage that we provided met or exceeded what you guys had with these, and in fact, we have coverages that the other carrier didn't even provide. And the last piece I wanted to discuss is the e-resource library. We understand that not every municipality can have a safety service department, can have a human resource department. We have an extensive library of information that's available free of charge to all of our members. And 2 years ago, we actually consolidated it all into a web-based platform that is incredibly easy to navigate. If you can come up with a situation or an issue that needs to be addressed, we can come up with best practices, a white paper, and or training on how to handle it. So included in the e-resource library are employment practices, sexual harassment training. These are actually assignable classes. You can take anyone who has an email in the village, assign everyone the class. You can then track to see who's taken it, who's passed it, who's failed it, and who hasn't. Who's completed it. We can do work comp, we can do driver safety training. We also have, if you haven't updated your employee handbook in a number of years, we have an employee handbook creator. This is state specific. You simply go into the website, you type in the Village of West Milton, State of Ohio. The program says you have to have the following 25 sections in your employee handbook. We also have a list of 50 additional policy and procedures you may want to have. The handbook is actually downloadable and editable, and more importantly, it's a live document. As changes to the ORC occur, your handbook will be automatically updated. It comes with a signature page, so you can make sure every employee has signed off on it for your files. This is included free of charge. I know from past experience that if you try to have an employee handbook made in the open market, it's about $4,000 to $6,000 cost. Did I nail that?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
So again, free of charge. We tell everybody to go in and play in the resource library. There's human resources, even though we don't provide any of your benefits, there's a ton of human resources, training, and best case scenarios and white papers in there for you. We have 3 loss control engineers besides our cyber. And Jeff will be getting a call within the next 30 days, usually within 30 days of inception of the policy. We'll have somebody come out. Our loss control representatives work for you. You technically own the pool, and you have a say in its membership. A lot of times when a loss control representative comes out, they put down a list of demands. Here's the things we found wrong. Send us your responses and how you fix them. We understand that budgetary constraints prevent you from making all the fixes immediately. If you tell us, listen, this is we definitely want to address this within the next 3 years, that's great. Is there something we can do to help you alleviate a potential loss scenario? Absolutely. Mike and his team will walk and say, okay, if you can't fix this, we can do this or this. We recommend you do this. A lot of times it's take the grant, use it $1,000 to buy mulch for the playground. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, guys. I really look forward to working with you, as does my team. We've got an excellent program. We're going to push you to use the products and services. They're all for your benefit. Any questions for anyone here?
The debris removal, is that like if we had a tornado come through? So like the current coverage is like $1 million, and your coverage would be like $250,000. Is that?
So yeah, and that is the coverage you're looking at is kind of a throw-in coverage. So every insurance policy has their standard limits: the $1 million, $3 million, on the liability and then the deductible. And then every policy includes a bunch of additional coverages. So I put down what our policy offers. If you want $1 million for debris removal, I can give it to you at no additional premium.
I'm sure Ben and them would have it cleaned up by day's end.
That's what I'm thinking.
Can we bill our own insurance though?
Can you bill? I'm sorry.
If we document our own costs.
Yes, you can. You
Okay.
can. Actually, yeah, when we were fine with it, and that also goes along with the preservation of property. So we have money built into the policy that if you preserve the property, we're going to pay for the plywood, we're going to pay for the blue tarping to make sure the property doesn't get damaged further.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Beglin.
Thank you. Thank you
Very much, sir. If, with your permission, I'll deviate from the written agenda and ask Mr. Our esteemed Department Supervisor, Service Director, to give us an update on the water tower.
Oh, I got a lot of titles tonight. I don't even have it.
That's what I was trying to make up for. I felt bad that I ran out of plates. Give me something to slide your name into.
I think it was basically.
Yeah, that's right. Wouldn't fit.
Just a real quick update. As I talked to council before, we have some issues with our north water tower. I put the bid packet together, got everything out. I actually not only advertised it, but I sent bid packs unsolicited to 6 companies. I followed up with emails and phone calls because I was really trying to get as many as we could. We ended up getting 2, one that I expected and then another one that had started with some interest. The other companies, I don't know. They just weren't really interested. But good news, in my opinion, is the pricing is actually pretty good. The first bid for what I'll explain is items 1 through 4 was $61,760 as compared to $121,000 for McGuire Iron and Sioux Falls. The winning bidder being Pittsburgh Tank and Maintenance, who actually did the inspection on the tank. So items 1 through 4, if you the fill pipe that goes up to the center of the tank, that's being totally replaced. It could spring another leak tonight, maybe a couple months from now, we just don't know. We've got a few clamps on there now, and the guys don't want to try to look for a bigger ladder. The second would be on the top of the tower, the roof vent. It's vacuum pressure, frost-proof vent screen. Needs replaced. The third one was the overflow pipe drain, and the fourth was we have it empty for them to do a sediment clean out of the tank. It's just a really good thing to do when it's empty. It's good for the water quality and stuff. So that was the bid item. 61,760. Actually, you figure replacing that whole standpipe plus that other work. It's actually, I was expecting to be higher. I don't know about Tim, but so I was expecting more close to the 121. And then the addendum or the separate bid was item number 5, which is a pressure washer for the exterior tower. They get 3,500 PSI. They wash the dirt, grime, and stuff off the exterior. I will tell you that, I didn't really talk to Tim a lot about this, but the UV coating may be wearing off a little bit, and to have them do it for $19,705 while they're set up would be the best option, in my opinion. If you look at the north tower, you can see on the bottom of the bowl where it's starting to get accumulation of just, algae, sediment, dirt. We don't have to do, it's not an emergency, we don't have to do it now. We can put it on our maintenance agreement that we hope to have next year. But I would say that while they're out here, just to save the UV coating finish, that we just go ahead and have them clean it while they're here.
So it would be safe to say that your recommendation and mine both would be that even though it's not budgeted, that we move forward with those repairs this year and find the funds, even if we have to appropriate additional dollars.
Yes.
This will be on the agenda for next regular council meeting with the resolution authorizing that expenditure, if you agree. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about making these investments in maintaining our infrastructure?
Couple questions. So, not directly related to the fair. Help me remember, Ben, when we had those painted. Do you remember about how many years?
Yeah, that was 19, Tim? Was it 19?
No. I think the North Tower, it almost been 5 years of it.
Yeah, not 19, 16.
Yeah. So
15,
they recommend
The south tower was,
just shortly after that. We had to wait till winter.
it was like end of 2017 or beginning of 2018.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Well, it was Swan this year, and I didn't come in until 16, the end of 16. So it was probably 17.
The reason I'm asking is the UV coat that they applied, they said that that had a short lifespan, like 5 years or something like that. Is that something that they need to come in and reapply again? Or
They do that when the tower's painted, right? Is that right, Tim?
Yeah, they usually do that every 10 years. They recommend power washing every 5. The reason we paid so much on our towers before for the maintenance is because we let them go 15, 20 years. They were only power washed once. Just the north tower was done once. That's why we had to take them all the way down. So right now, if we keep maintenance up on them and we just have to repaint them, we can go over the paint that's on there because you can put so many mils thickness of paint on those before you have to take it back off. So, as long as we keep up on our maintenance, that's a huge thing. But it's, expensive. It's like, elevated work, so everything's built.
so can we expect next year south water towers going to need pressure washed?
Correct.
That's why we'd like to get them both on a maintenance agreement.
Well, good. I mean, if there is something good to come out of this, it's that we have had a full inspection now on the north tower. And there was quite a list, and a lot of that stuff we can do ourselves. So signage and padlocks, and things like that, so.
So to be clear, everything we can do, we are
Correct.
in-house. We're
Yeah.
only asking
Yeah,
for professional help on those
Yeah.
items that are beyond our expertise.
that is correct.
Liam, you volunteered? You don't have
How are you on roads?
This kid's game.
Yeah.
We were fell off the water tower once a year, so.
Do you? That's true. Not with a power washer, I don't imagine, but.
No, I mean, normally.
No, We'll have to up our liability insurance, but sure, we'll do that. Any other questions for Mr. Harris? Everybody comfortable with that? Thank you all very much. Ben, do you have anything else that you wanted to add that I didn't put on the agenda?
No, I don't think so.
Chief, whether for the update on the fire department conviction?
Heard a shame.
I figured there was a reason why.
So basically convention 22nd, 23rd of July. We're in the planning process, pretty hot and heavy now as we're getting close. One question that I had to ask the council was, I didn't realize when they want to camp in the park, they want to camp the whole week. I did not know. A lot of them take their vacations that week from work to camp at conference. So that would be July, we'll say the 18th to the 24th. And that was a question they had me to ask, if they could camp for a week.
What part of the park do they live in?
Down, if you go down the hill, down by the river, where that gravel drive goes off to the right, back towards the Boy Scout camp.
Okay.
And where the carnies.
The bottom, the very bottom road, right?
Yeah.
We have the carnival
There
first
first
now.
4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And they're gonna be a lot less shitty than those.
I'm all for it.
Is it conflicting with anything in the park discussion?
I can't tell you for sure, but now I'm
That was, you said the 18th to the 24th, right?
Yes.
Of
July.
July.
Do you just leave the porta johns down there, or do you open up the facility?
Gentlemen, how about this? How about the staff will look a little closer at the regular council meeting, we'll come back to you and either confirm that you're comfortable doing that, make sure we've considered all the issues that will need to be resolved to accommodate. But in general, I think it's a great idea.
And they'll have campers, so they'll have
Right, yeah.
bathrooms in the
It's not like
campers,
tents.
so.
Jay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
are we gonna have to worry about water for them? I know you can hire, they can hire mobile sanitation.
Right.
Dump their sewage.
Right.
But are they gonna want water?
That I'm not sure. I can find out and come to the next council meeting.
Mr. Tracy's got it.
If only we owned like a big truck that held all the water.
It's got a big water.
We don't have one. We can set up something like they do for the Chrome.
Right.
And they run
Like a
those.
water purifier type
Yeah,
thing.
so, but we also, I don't know, it just depends on how many.
That would be the safest week of the year in West Milton. That's what I think.
And I think only probably 4 or 5 can camp all week.
Yeah.
And then the weekend, you'll probably get maybe 10 or 15
Equally as
campers.
brave.
If you can get better confirmation on what we should expect, and I
Okay.
think we'll run it by staff and at the next council meeting, just confirm. I think it's a great idea if we can make it work, so just want to make
Right.
sure we get the details in. All right?
22nd.
22nd is Friday.
22nd is Friday, 21st.
And 23rd is Saturday. So, and then everything's same as we talked about in the previous council meeting, just 48 in Washington.
We get details, or
Okay.
like, firm, who showed up, we can get that out on social media and whatever else we can get over it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Just as thinking, what do you do if it's wet and muddy for the campers? You might have a backup plan, what parking lot in town would be
Yeah.
big enough to hold however many campers you're gonna have, if that becomes a little treacherous down there.
You want to reach out to the school?
Yeah, my immediate thought is right to the old high school parking lot, but, yeah. I just have it as a backup idea. I just imagine people with fifth wheels trying to get out of that mud down there if it gets sketchy.
I'm hoping it's dry still.
Right, else on that topic? If not, the next item, number 5 on the agenda, you should have in your packet correspondence from Mr. Applegate requesting an increase in the village contribution for the 4th of July payroll. Okay, good. Everybody find it? So take a look at that. He's asking for an increase, and obviously you can read his explanation. He was not able to attend this evening, but I guess I'd be open to your comments on your interest in accommodating his request, or how you'd like to proceed.
Start by saying last year was awesome. It's probably the best display I've seen us do in a long, long time.
$2,000 is out of
The cost of everything else going up, it doesn't seem overly, yeah.
Great.
No, I'm for it. I know how hard this is a small group, like 3 to 4 people that put on the whole 4th of July, and it's not easy.
They worked really hard with like different fundraisers and stuff like that, quarter auctions.
Yeah, so I am all for it.
I don't think they're making their job easier and just milking us, that's not what I feel at all. In the line of everything that's going on in the world, it seems almost in line.
Awesome. Consider that a consensus?
Yes.
We'll assume we'll put together a resolution to authorize the increase in the next council meeting. Very good.
Without batting an eye.
Next on the agenda is the discussion on the proposed fireworks legislation. I'll turn that over to Chief Doyle and the Law Director.
Is there a proposal in their packet?
They should have a copy of the proposed legislation, yes.
Okay. So at the last workshop, I think it was, we had discussion about changing House Bill 172, which has to do with fireworks and basically the state of Ohio opening up fireworks to any citizen who wants to have them. So I'd asked last week if there had been any news back from you folks to Mr. Sheridan. And as last week, he hadn't heard anything from anyone about whether you wanted to or not do something with it. At that time, I had reached out to Ms. Broche and asked her to take a look at some legislation and what we would have to actually do to our current ordinances if we were to opt out of what the law is. There really isn't a whole lot we have to do other than a little small caveat that you'll see that she's put in there that basically says we're going to leave ours in full force and we're not going to do anything under the new law. If we choose to make a change, I think we're going to have to go back and look at all of our ordinances that pertains to the fireworks, because I don't think we're going to want to just abolish everything. So we're going to want to go back and look at it. But the problem we're running into a deadline. This all takes effect July 2nd. So we really have to move on this if we're going to do something, so that in May and June, if we were going to do something, we would have something before you at the regular council meetings for you to pass into law before we would have this new state law take effect in July. So having said that, obviously my recommendation, I think I uttered the same from Chief Jay, we had advocated not to change anything as we currently have it. There's a lot of different reasons for our proposal of saying that, but obviously as a council body, that's up to you as to how you would like to proceed with it. The law kind of just opens it up and doesn't really have any provisions, I don't think, to allow it to, it basically just allows people to do whatever they want. There's a lot of holidays in there for them to have fireworks and to have festivities that the law is going to allow them to do that.
Chief Jay, did you want to add some comments? I should have included you.
Chief said, I spoke to the fire marshal about it, and he's against the legalism prohibition against fireworks. See it. No storage limitations. We pull up on a house fire and the whole garage can be full of consumer grade fireworks and not know it. So a lot of safety aspects that aren't being considered.
Thank you. I'm sure that has nothing to do with that. City selection. Council, you got questions, comments?
Can you give me whichever one, give me a 2-minute version of what we have right now, what we're gonna have for people that don't know anything about fireworks?
What we currently have, the law prohibits them in the state of Ohio. So it has been, as long as I can remember back, until the early 70s, I think it was in the early mid-70s, that we changed the law and stopped allowing people to have fireworks.
Of any sort?
Yes, you can't have fireworks in those stores. So the law is going from not allowing you to have fireworks to allowing you to have them. So there's no in between, and they're also allowing you to sell them here, whereas you used to be, you could go to Indiana and buy them. Or if you go to, there was a place in Fairmont called Foy's, which signed a waiver that said you would not use them in the state of Ohio, because they legally couldn't sell them here if you were using them for consumer usage here. So the law's changed totally. What the legislation is allowing to occur is to have those vendors, the people can sell them, there's no limitations on how much you can own, and you can use them in any fashion you want to. Give an example, if you have a house close to each other, example would be in the trailer park, how close some of those trailers are. Letting those fireworks off in a trailer that's virtually a little bit of skin around a lot of wood, it's going to go quick. Now, my other issue I have with this is the noise ordinance and dealing with the noise problems. Because if you go to the avenue of not, or allowing people to use the fireworks and we say, okay, we're just going to do what the state says, I don't feel that we have any complaints that we can answer because of the noise at that point. If you're legally doing something, how can I tell you you can't? You can't enact a law that they can't have noises, because we know they're going to cause noises.
Only fireworks that don't cause any noise.
Which is sparklers, which you could have, smoke bombs, those kind of things.
What, kind of along with Craig's question is, what do our current ordinances say that?
Our ordinances echo what the state of Ohio says.
Used to say.
Yeah, what the state says until July.
So with this language, does it, because this says it concerning the possession, sale, or discharge, ignition, explosion of fireworks, does that mean anything if we're referencing old Ohio law?
No, because we're referencing our own ordinances. So we're not referencing statute as in the Ohio Revised Code. We can reference our own ordinance and it's fine. And the ordinance, it explains what fireworks are.
Okay, and that says in our ordinance, not the ORC, but
It
our
actually
ordinance,
lists it out, yes.
it says no fireworks.
Right, the only way you can have a firework is if you are a vendor, you get a permit to let it off.
That's one of the things I talked to Mr. Bush about when I did this, is I said, I don't want to stop the 4th of July festivities. I want it to legally be able for us to still have fireworks here, which our ordinance currently allows anyways. So we weren't looking to change anything. What you have in front of you is really what the Ohio Revised Code says now. As of July 2nd, that all goes away. Because in the state of Ohio, we're no longer going to regulate fireworks. However, the new legislation, House Bill 72, allows municipalities or villages, cities, and what have you, to enact their own ordinances, which we have in place. Instead of mirroring what the state would say, we just keep the language that was already in place, and we're now saying that's just an ordinance that is applicable only within the municipality of West Milton, which is what that would be.
What does the noise ordinance reference to fireworks keep?
So we don't have a noise ordinance.
We have,
Nuisance ordinance.
It's a nuisance ordinance. So what we do is we cite them under usually disorderly conduct after we've got to warn them if it's creating a problem. A couple years ago when COVID, we had a lot of stuff going on. It sounded like a war zone, fireworks kind of 4th of July that year on Saturday night. It was crazy. But I had one gentleman that I ended up having to summons into court because he suffers from PTSD. And it drove him over the edge and created a big problem, and he ended up getting arrested because of it. That's just one side effect of the whole thing. Now, you can't enact an ordinance that's going to cover everything. But at the same time, I'm fearful of what happens if we just totally open it up. A lot of people do that.
I think we have an obligation to balance freedoms with ordinances. It's not illegal to fire a gun in the state of Ohio.
Right.
We don't allow it in towns because it's loud, it's dangerous, and you can't guarantee where the projectiles come.
Right.
I would kind of say fireworks fall in that same category. They're loud, they're dangerous, and you can't guarantee where the projectiles go.
Right.
So when you launch a bottle rocket, there's no guarantee it's coming down on your roof, your yard. When someone launches a Roman candle, there's no guarantee that people are going to keep what they're doing in their own properties. And whether you have a big yard, and that's why we go out. We go to our friend's house in the country when we want to shoot a gun.
Yeah.
Where there's a backstop, where we know it's going to stop what we're shooting.
That's a great analogy.
And I just felt like, same thing with fireworks. Go to your buddy's place just out of the edge of town where if his grass catches on fire and his yard's burning, it's not going to affect somebody 10 feet over, you know.
We've always taken assault.
Plus, the fire department gets to have fun.
We can get the field truck out, that's for sure.
From a police agency, we have always taken a soft approach on fireworks anyway.
You guys have been great about that.
The reason we do that is, I don't want people to not have a good time. I don't want them to not enjoy themselves. So if we get a complaint, we go out, we see this setting off the fireworks, we say, knock it off. Okay. The good thing is, it's not going to be illegal really in the state of Ohio to possess those. It would be in the village, but not really in the state of Ohio. So if I tell you to knock it off, hey, we do still have the ordinance. Then the guys, if they end up getting a call back, same thing's still going on. A lot of times they're shooting them off in the middle of the street.
That's what I saw last year, even approaching the park. It was being done, like, we had to reroute how we went to the park based on people letting them off on Washington Street. And it was like they were trying to compete with the city on a commercial grade.
They do, and you see that. And you know, that's not what this whole purpose is, but obviously in the new state law, they're allowing, there's like 10 or 11 different holidays they're recognizing for you to allow those to occur, including day before those holidays, that holiday, and sometimes the day after that holiday. So you're getting a 3-day reprieve to kind of shoot all the fireworks you want to shoot.
And I can tell you, most cities and villages are opting out. That's the majority of them that I've seen come through. But the ones who are opting into it, I guess you could say, or are accepting it, are putting limits on what kind of fireworks people can possess, just the fountains, you know, those sort of things. But nothing of the big stuff.
I don't know too many people have been shot by a gun, but I can name a lot of people that are missing a pinky or have a nickname based around some damage done by a firework, you know.
So the scene you were describing last year, it was illegal.
Yeah.
So my question is.
It's scary too.
Well,
I mean, for the public in general.
do we really expect it to change? If it's already illegal.
I would expect it to be worse. Legal, I would expect it to be worse. I would think people would think you blessed it. And the availability will go through the roof.
Well, I understand that, but I'm saying, do you really think that the average citizenry of West Milton is going to know that it's still illegal? Or that, because the state of Ohio says it's open. And so I'm saying, do you think it's really going to be a different scene down there this year as opposed to last?
I think whether the law changed or not, what happened last year was not okay.
That's my point.
I'm afraid it could get worse, yes.
Yeah, I think it'll be worse.
once they've been educated in person.
But I guess my point is, didn't they have those tools last year? And
They
it still
did,
happened?
and they'd like to keep them.
Right.
So you're absolutely right.
Yep, I get what you're saying, but at the same token, I think those people are always gonna do them regardless of what the law says. But if we open it up, those who didn't normally do them.
I would say last year was exceptionally, it was different for whatever reason, it was worse. And I don't know if it was a few people with a lot of fireworks, it didn't seem overly rampant through town, but one little area there was some people that had some stuff that just.
There was someone that lived on Emory, just outside the village, that had almost as good fireworks as we had. They were pretty nice fireworks.
And that's okay, I don't know.
Yeah, it's out in the county.
If we have the consensus, that's great. If you want to consider it more, as the chief explained and Renee, that we have to take action at some point fairly quickly if we're going to deviate from what the state is doing. So, does it have to be the next council meeting, but pretty darn close. So, you have more questions, you have more discussion, or?
I do have a question to you. Is there anything else that you can think of to relate this to, that the state says this is okay, but municipalities have the power to say, no, this is illegal? Because I know preemption, with like gun ownership and things like that, can't do, obviously. What would this relate to in that sense? Something else.
Well, I mean,
We do
fire
vote in some
protection in
precincts.
city limits you can't do.
Yeah, I can relate to a fire code.
Yeah.
So, like in the city of Vandalia, so here we've adopted the Ohio Fire Code, right? So whatever the Ohio Fire Code says, that's what we follow. In Vandalia, we've added some restrictions because we have businesses that have hazardous materials and those kind of things. So we've needed to put some additional items in place.
Right, but in that case, you're restricting the action, you're not making it illegal to possess. That's another thing that the problem is with this, in my opinion.
Well,
is that, I can go to wherever, Tip City, and buy this legally in Ohio, but if I bring it back to West Milton, now I'm not even allowed to have it.
Well,
So possess it, whether or not I shoot it off.
or manufacture it in Vandalia.
Right.
So there's limitations to that. So we say, yes, you can have it, but it's only this much instead of 55 gallons, and you can't manufacture it.
The marijuana dispensary can manufacture itself. Some cities say, no, you can't do it in our city. You can pass that legislation to say that.
So
It's only relatable to that.
we did something similar with the 5G, with the cell towers. So we limited no new, they couldn't build any new cell towers for 5G where there isn't above ground utilities. So if it's underground utilities, they can't put any new towers. So that's another, I guess.
Okay, but again, the state of Ohio says I can possess this item. I bring it inside the village limits and now I'm a criminal. And that's the problem I have with it. The chief's concerns, both of them, they're not falling on deaf ears with me. But if there's a problem with what has happened with this, it's at the state level for allowing it. And my problem is I'm not comfortable with saying, I'm gonna make you a criminal as something you've legally purchased. It's kind of like back in the day when we had dry counties and wet counties and you were a bootlegger, or whatever, And so, to me, that's the problem with this. I would feel more comfortable about it if it took the approach she mentioned. Okay, well, let's take the possession part out of it, or let's list what can be done.
So you would be comfortable with the possessing it would not be illegal, but setting it off would.
And I would also like to see some kind of maybe list of things that could be done. Like some of the ones she mentioned, cities that were saying, what could be, because they're also all not equal.
Now, I would say I've always seen our police somebody's letting off some bottle rockets, they're not beating down your door. If someone's doing some firecrackers, you're not drawing the police. It's when somebody's letting off Roman candles and higher end stuff that makes people make their windows shake and make their dogs go crazy and puts their nerves on edge. That's what seems to bring, the 911 call to the police, and there is some differentiation in there for sure.
In that analogy, there's a lot of people, I'm sure, in town who possess marijuana, but we don't know it, and it's illegal.
Well, the state says it's okay, but I'm reminded every day where I work for the federal government, it is still federally illegally. And whether we have a prescription in the state of Ohio or not, if we get popped at work, we're gone. It doesn't matter that my doctor said it's okay. So there are levels of who says what that we all have to be aware of, and nuances. And, as citizens, we have a certain responsibility to be aware of what rules we have to follow and don't.
I'd much prefer to have something that limits what you can do. Like, you can do whatever, you want to vibrate firecrackers and shoot those off on Independence Day. That's not the same as the same thing that we set off down by the river. So, how much, I don't know exactly how to word that, but how much you can possess in terms of volume or weight or whatever, so that people can take advantage of the changes in law, but we don't create a huge fire hazard by having their garage doors.
Fireworks have classifications.
So
You can limit them by classification.
Other
I
cities that
think
have,
the one that you had sent me had the definition of the fireworks and the ones they can possess and stuff like that. So I'll go through them, I have several of them, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of different drafts out there, communities have already shown.
right, because in Don's analogy of they're gonna take it out to the country, technically, no, you're not going to, because it can't even be in your house.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on that if one family member makes the run to wherever the fireworks store gets it, and you've got it at your house because you're going out to grandma's farm, you're right, you suddenly become a criminal, technically. You may have no intention of doing that in town, but you may have been the guy doing the run,
I can get them together and send them over to Jeff.
I think we'll get those distributed, take a look at them, and just, you can offer some feedback prior to the council meeting, so we have some direction of where we're going. Is that all right? Very good. The next item on the agenda is discussion of Third Thursdays. The group's been working very hard to get ready, and we're seeking actually some additional funding. Actually, before we get out of here, we should review this as a draft. That's okay, no, I don't want to forget. I just don't want to forget. So one of the issues that has come up is the possibility of expanding Third Thursdays by closing a portion of 48 during that time frame. And I had some discussions with staff, and there's pros and cons to that issue, but I thought it might be helpful for Councilor Copp to explain.
I think Don wants to chase people down.
Before we move forward getting permits to expand that closure, and I think Mr. Herron might have some comments as well. So, Councilor?
I'm really enjoying just listening.
Okay, my explanation is
Okay, so with Third Thursdays, we're starting them back up in May. We go May through October. And it's from 4 to 8 p.m. every third Thursday of the month. We have food trucks, and then we also include a band every month. So Scott is on the committee, the Project Revival Committee with me, and then several other people. And we were just kind of talking about how to maybe ramp up Third Thursdays a little bit. It's getting a little bit bigger. We're going to start having some, what would you call that? Vendors down towards the south end, the north end of the town. So we kind of thought, hey, would we be able to possibly, we just threw it out there, shut down the road and really make it a visible event, for everyone. Right now we have it in the parking lot, as you know. So it's not something that we needed to do. We were just kind of putting it out there because I know it is a big deal to shut down a state route, obviously.
how many blocks were you talking about? Do you have an idea? Maybe I should pick on Councilor Hurst. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, you're okay. Sometimes you just like to sit and listen to this one. Probably from, I'm thinking maybe Hamilton to front. So just a thought, and I mean, it's nothing that we need to do, or we were even thinking maybe even Washington Street, but I think the reason we were thinking more of the 48 is to keep people on the front and then keep stores open and kind of, so thoughts.
I don't want to sound like a dumb down.
Okay. It is a big deal.
Never thought of you that way.
One of the downsides,
So,
as I understand it, is we have an informal arrangement, and correct me if I describe it wrong, with ODOT. And we're not always following their permit requirements when we close it down the 1 or 2 times a year that we do that. If we're closing it down once a month, that's not going to hold. We'll have to go back through the process, and that's possible. In the letter that you're going to review, I tried to build extra money in to help us deal with staffing, because one of Ben's concerns was getting volunteers once a month without overtime. Then it goes to take all the signs and put them out, take them back in, and get that taken care of. Same thing with the police department. Since we didn't put that money in the budget, if we were able to get additional funding, that would help pay our staff that extra time that it would take to do that. But I think the 3 issues were funding and staffing, but also going through ODOT. Would they allow us to close it once a month for even just 4 hours? Maybe they would, but there would be a lot more paperwork and permitting to go through. Is that fair, Ben?
Yeah.
So I think it's a great idea, but it's not, it does take some effort to implement. I think it's the best way.
Yeah, and I never really thought about the extra staff.
Sure,
you know.
that's okay.
I just thought
That's
we'll close the road.
And then get it out in the middle with the sign.
Just slow. Go that way.
I don't want to speak for Doyle, but in fairness to my guys, and Thursday nights, they're mowing grass and pouring concrete.
See, yeah.
I've talked to them too about it, because I mean, they would have to make this work, and I mean, again, if nobody's downer, it's a huge
Deal.
thing to
The
do.
policy that I would propose that we would enforce it under would strictly be voluntary. So we'd have to make the pot sweet enough that somebody's willing to spend the extra hours to do that. And that's only if we were giving some financial support that would allow us to do that and not necessarily out of our budget.
So I did have a counter proposal.
Yes, let's hear
Free
it.
food and beer vouchers?
Huh?
Free food and beer vouchers?
That would be good. Well, I think everybody would probably participate there, but,
To limit the volunteers.
like, me and Doyle have been talking a lot about it downtown, because not taking the third Thursdays into consideration, but me and Doyle are on the same page, like, every time we close that down, and when it's
On your list, I'd like to very briefly discuss the concept. I know we've discussed at least one other time, but didn't make any progress on it. Staff and I believe all agree we need to modify our ordinance as it regards the notification and dealing with tall grass. Right now, it takes almost a month before we can actually get out there and make a difference in somebody who hasn't mowed. And so what I'd like, if council agrees, is to ask the law director to come up with the shortest legal time frame and notice that we can issue that allows our crew to get out there before it's 2 feet tall. And then the second piece I'd like to see added to the ordinance is some type of a definition of an habitual offender. If we've had to mow it more than twice, if we've had to notice you more than so many times, whatever's a legal threshold, that from that rest of that season, we don't have to notify them, or whatever minimal effort we have to take before we go out and mow it and get it cleaned up.
I think it's also important that we be able to give our citizens resources, especially circumstances where you got older folks that can't, put them in contact with council churches, and if we could, I'm a little like Forrest Gump, I just like to mow grass. I know there's other people that like to do that too, and wouldn't hesitate to help a neighbor out.
I can tell you with some degree of confidence that our staff, I know how I handled it, we have those resources and a couple of others that will help. And if there's any cooperation at all, we're not going to send the crew out mowing. Almost every time last year, I need a week, I need this time. Okay. But then we'll follow up, and if you don't follow through, I'll even give you a second chance. if you intend, but 95% of them, there's none of that. It's not a question of my mower's broke, or I just haven't had time. And I know Tim will handle it in the same way. He's doing a great job so far. Our guys don't want to go mow your yard. That's the last thing they want to do.
So when we go and we actually do mow, is there a process where we take like pictures of the before so that we can prove that, it was in violation of the ordinance?
I believe we have, but if we've not consistently, we certainly can't. That's a very simple process with your phone.
I had a friend who lived in Vandalia. He had some trees that hung over the sidewalk, and they sent him his notices and he ignored them. But each time, it's like they had someone out there with a measuring pole that showed, here's where you're breaking. So he knew where he should have cut. And then just before they came in, or no, he did it after. It's like he paid more than what the city charged him to have him come in and cut it back even further because he didn't know that they'd already done it.
We don't want that. We want to charge a lot more, so they don't want us to do it, I can tell you that.
But it was the pictures that really set it apart.
Absolutely, and there's no reason why we wouldn't have documentation at any time with everybody that has a cell phone. Someone suggested to me that another jurisdiction nearby, literally the notice is a little stick in your yard with a sign saying you've got 5 days to mow it.
Yeah,
If you don't mow it, they're going to mow it. And we're going to charge you. That's legal. Again, okay, and that's the kind of feedback I need from you.
Huber Heights, they publish it once in the spring on newspaper. So here is your notice. I don't know, you tell me if that's legal or not, but they do it. They just, it's in the newspaper, starting in March. Hey, starting March 25th, or whatever. This is the ordinance. You've been notified. This is your first notification for everybody in the city. And then, that's how they do it. I don't know.
So out of the violations that you normally have, how many are normally elderly people? Like that really can't get out there? People that are too...
Last year, I would say less than 2% of the ones I dealt with.
So most of them just don't want to do it.
No.
I know when my uncle got to, last year, he hit the point, he was 86, he couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't believe it cost me $50 a whack to contract somebody to come do it. And it took me a little while to find a neighborhood kid that was willing to do it for $25 a pop. But, even if we had I don't know, if it's some of the neighborhood kids that do stuff like that, put their flyer on the city webpage,
I know of two, the council churches you mentioned, but there's another group called Beglin, and they're specifically set up for an older person or a person who financially can't afford not only mowing grass, but other repairs. It's church folks who will contact them.
Make some money on grass.
Or mow it up and not charge them.
Last year, there were school kids offered to do it, but they aren't bringing that up. Last year, school kids offered to do stuff like this. There was a council member's school kid, I won't say who, but council member's school kids.
You have the sign in front of you, some of you.
I can bring up the video.
Sheridan did a wonderful job of giving us colors and logos and fonts. And so at some point, sooner rather than later, certainly not tonight, give some recommendations on what color of sign you'd like to go to, what font, and if you want to make a change in the logo.
I like that.
Okay? And we can also show them on a pole, if you want to see it. One of the things is, it's a big difference sitting here looking at it and driving by it 30 or 40 miles an hour. These meet all the visibility standards, and so, it's getting there. So this is just your first chance to look at it. Some of you purchased some, and that's great. We can get other for samples, but I guess until we make a decision, at least leave a couple of them, or all of them, so we can come to a consensus on how we want to move forward. The plan, as I understand it, in the downtown area are the oldest, so those would be the first we replace. They're not cheap, and so we would budget and come up with probably just do that area, and hopefully do a little bit of each part of the village over several years. The other part of the village that we get these is once we pick on a design, the developer out 571 wants to replace all the signs on the south side at his cost. And he would take whatever new style we come up with. So they would have them at his cost, the village would pay for downtown, and then we'd start a cycle of updating throughout the village. Probably take us 5 or 6 years at the cost. The last piece, and I'm going quickly, please stop me if you have any questions. There was some discussion of whether or not some citizens might be interested in purchasing personalized signs or particular street name signs. I have the price list. If you're interested in doing that, I think we can. We would mark them up significantly with the proceeds going into the street fund. So if you want your street paved, and you want to buy a couple of personalized signs, know that the profit, so to speak, would go into that fund, if you're interested in doing that. So that's, again, not a decision to make tonight, but if you're interested, we can make
I'm not sure that's legal.
I know that makes the most sense, but if you're talking a couple $1,000s in funds that you would, where are people going to see that couple $1,000s? Like,
it's a very small piece.
Yeah. So like a couple $1,000s towards something else that could be all that.
If you want to spend it somewhere else, that's fine.
Yeah.
To me, it's illogical that you put it on the streets, but again, you're not going to pay
Right, that's gonna feel like 3 potholes.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be like huge potholes filled by your fundraiser.
The council can decide where the proceeds go, if the community wants to raise the funds using that tool. Okay, there you go. If you may notice, you have the historic signs that council put up in the hallway. I noticed you haven't taken a picture. I don't know how often you used to do that, or the photographer was, but you know. Okay, that was easy. But we've already had at least one change in council that's not reflected in the picture. So if you want to do that, sometimes we need to schedule that. Another, it was suggested that whether or not the council would consider receiving digital packets as opposed to hard copies. I believe that, is there any question of legality on the packet? I didn't think so. So it's entirely up to you. We'll be happy to continue to make paper packets and have them hand delivered to you, but we can also do entirely digital packets that go to you electronically on Friday, save the copying.